Greetings, PLO Order. Another episode of awesomeness. Today's topic is calling 3-bets. How much should we actually fold to 3-bets? Topic that is often hard for people. We open a hand and open in 3-bets, and we're not sure what to do when we have medium-strength hands. Or opponent starts to play like maniac 3-bets a lot. What should we do? Should we play tight or looser? What should we do? And 3-betting game in general is something that it's a bit harder to learn than the standard opening ranges. Because then the post-flop is a bit different and you can't just play fit or fold poker that much. So let's see what we have here today. First thing is to fold or not to fold. That is the question. Back in the days, before solvers, before any real strategies, we folded bad pocket pairs out of position and nothing in position. There were a lot of professional players, mid-stakes regulars, who just said that I'm not folding the 3-bets in position. Position is so powerful. And out of position, rainbow kings were folded. So the folding percentage was 5 to 10%. Out of position, in position, almost 0% folding. And then came solver. And Marco Solver says that sometimes we fold up to 50% of our hands to 3-bet. And people said that it doesn't make sense. And now, the truth is probably somewhere in between 0 and 50. But where? And the answer is, it depends. The closer opponent plays solver strategy for 3-betting ranges and post-flop strategy, the closer we actually should play to solver ranges, because otherwise he's going to exploit us. So if opponent has solver-based 3-betting ranges, and then post-flop you can see that he's probably practiced solver strategy. He has different sizings based on the board, and so on and so on. Sometimes traps with strong hands, check raises on boards that he should miss, and so on. Then probably you should start to fold a bit more, because otherwise he's going to run you over post-flop. But the further opponent plays from solver strategy, the less you should fold. Like if the opponent, well, there's going to be some examples how the opponent can play far from solver strategy. And how should we adjust? But it's a rule of thumb that folding a lot to 3-bets is a defensive move. And we use only defense to prevent opponent from exploiting us. Like prevent opponent from using offensive weapons. And the better the opponent is at offense, the more we need to defend. More we play solver strategy. And the worse opponent is in offense, then the less we need solver strategy. We can find some other ways to compete. Well, rate matters. Surprise, surprise. But as we play small stakes, the rate is actually a super interesting thing. And here's the thing. I checked the numbers from 3 different solver sims. So I have 3 different pre-flop sims. And each of those sims is competent. It's on different rate environment. And all of those are small stakes. But we had 3 different results. And the first situation is here. Middle position opens. Cut off 3-bets. Everyone folds. And it's back to middle position. How much should we fold? And before I show you the numbers, think about just the number. You open from middle position, so we open around 25% of hands. Then cut off 3-bets, sort of tight 3-betting range. But how much do we call? Or let's say how much we fold? 10%? 15? 20? 25? Well, PLO 25 zoom rate without the rate back is almost 50% fold. PLO 50 3% rate without the cap on GG poker we fold 41%. So slightly smaller rake in non-all-in pots, we fold a bit less, which is weird because the rake is higher if we stack off than on PLO 25 Zoom because it's not capped. And then we have PLO 50 on run it once with 50% rake back. In GG Poker, the rake back is not calculated, but on PLO 50 with 50% rake back, we only fold 33%, and each of these are pretty much the same situation. And the opening range and 3-betting ranges are quite similar. There's no huge differences how much we open from middle position or how much cutoff should 3-bet us. Not huge differences, but here we can see that the folding frequency to 3-bet based on the rake goes up from 33 to almost 50. So there's like 18% difference. And 18% is a lot of hands. So we can see that it's impossible to have universal small stakes solver strategy because the rake affects that much. And GG Poker with 50% rake back would probably even lower. Or on run it once, we could get even over 100% rake back on promotions, or close to 100%, and the 40% would go down a lot. But rake affects. Another situation, same simulations, cutoff open, small blind 3-bets. So now the 3-better is out of position, we are in position. On the previous example, we were out of position. So we are in position on the cutoff, and now small blind's 3-betting range is the widest, almost 10%. PLO 25 Zoom, fold 37, still pretty high folding percentage. On GG, fold 29. On run it once, fold 20%. So now, run it once folds only about half of what we fold on PLO 25 Zoom. So the rate has huge impact, and the reason is this. Most hands, like let's say here, the hands between run it once and PLO 25 Zoom rate folds, that's 17% of hands, are very marginal and very close to break even. So to call them would generate in solver strategy only tiny bit of EV. And when the rate is higher, that EV is killed. So we can see that small change in rate creates huge difference in coin ranges, which tells us that most of the hands that are played on run it once but folded on PokerStars, most of those hands are pretty break-even-ish anyway. So whether you play them or not doesn't have a huge impact on your win rate if you play them perfectly. So rate matters a lot. Let me see, where is our numbers? There. All right. Rate matters a lot. Opponent matters a lot. The tighter the 3-betting range is, the more we fold. And often people think that, okay, his 3-betting range is only aces. I can call with almost anything because I have a great visibility. Yeah, but the thing is that he always has huge equity. Actually, I made a simulation where I compared heads-up situation, normal calling the 3-bet and calling 3-bets when opponent has pocket aces. Then the thing is that actually if opponent was forced to 3-bet only aces, then we started to fold a bit more to 3-bets because his 3-betting range is so strong. He always has equity on the flop. And on most flops he has decent equity, while wider 3-betting range he could have 0% equity on some flops. Then the more opponent overplays his hands, more we can call. Like the guy with aces. Now, the assumption that we fold more to a really tight 3-betting range is that the opponent can play them well, close to perfectly. But if opponent overplays his hands, like stack off with aces on any flop, then we can start to call hands that are going to flop well versus aces. Or opponent 3-bets rundowns and then stacks off with just cut shots and stuff. So he's c-betting almost anything, and then after c-bet he's going to stack off anyway. Then we can call with more hands, because then when we hit, the EV goes up. And then last thing is that if opponent overfolds, we can call more. Like the guy with aces. Let's say he makes a small bet on boards that he often misses, and then we raise as a semi-bluff or pure bluff, and he just keeps bet folding when he misses the flops, then we can call with not almost anything, but close to it. So how the opponent plays creates opportunity for us to exploit him. If he plays over strategy, go for defense. If he deviates from over strategy in any way, attack that weakness and use your offense. And as a general rule of thumb, of course, out of position we fold more. Unless opponent is very predictable, like Maniac who stacks off always, or Nit who has aces and stacks c-bets every time and plays it same way. But in general, out of position we fold more. Then also the hand matters. The thing is that when someone 3-bet us, we should just fold crappy hands. And often those crappy hands are steals from the button, maybe from the cutoff if button is tied. We shouldn't have super crappy hands in any other positions unless we're stealing the blinds. But yeah, if we steal with crap, someone 3-bets, just fold it, get rid of it. We should fold also hands that will miss flops often. And it's a number of components. And it's the connectivity of the hand that matters. And also pocket pairs miss the flop way more often than hands without pocket pairs. Because if we have tri-pocket pair, the only way to hit the flop is in 3-bet blood is to hit the set. So 7 out of 8 times we will miss the flop. And we should also fold hands that collide with opponent's range. And here's an example. Opponent 3-bets with tight range, which is mostly Broadway cards. All kinds of Broadway hands. And our hand is Ace-Jack 7-4. The problem with this hand is if the flop is ace-high, he could have ace-king or even pocket aces. If the flop is jack-high, well, he could have a lot of equity. Probably jack small is one of those good flops for us. But he could have ace-jack, he could have overpair, and so on. So we are mostly playing with 7-4. So, like, opponent's range is here and our range is slightly lower, means that we're going to be dominated. If we have a hand like 7-6-5-4, it means opponent hands are here, or range is here, and we are on the other end of the range. So if we hit the flop, it's very rare that opponent dominates our 2 pairs, and so on. So sometimes you can just fold. If opponent overplays his hands, then we can call with good pocket pairs. And I'm going to show you. Let's bring out pocket shoes. Cutoff open, small blind 3-bets folded to us on the cutoff, and we have Jack 10, 9-8. Pretty nice hand. And opponent has pocket aces. So small blind range is pocket aces. We know he's very aces heavy on 3-bets. And we know he overplays them post-flop. So the situation is that our opponent overplays and his 3-betting range is tight. So this hand is quite perfect to crack aces. And now we calculate the EV when we call and assume opponent stacks off on any flop. So we use the PLO stack off on pocket shoes, and here the numbers mean that 48% of flops we stack off, and 52% of flops we fold. So pretty much half of the flops we hit hard enough to stack off versus aces. And when we do stack off, our average equity is 66%. And in the end, the result is around 13 pp plus EV to make the call. So if he has aces, it's a payday for us. Now, let's say we have pocket nines. And normally, we shouldn't even open this hand, but for some reason we did. And the small blind 3-bets, we know his ace is heavy. We are often going to fold these hands. Well, if he's going to stack off on any flop, then the situation changes. We're not going to hit the flop often enough. But 1 out of 4 times we do. And the thing is, when we do hit the flop, it's very often 2 pairs, set, or straight, or even flush. Let's wait for the numbers. Now our average equity is 73%. So by calling, we make over 6 pp's. Of course, in 100 pp pot, the rake is, or 200 pp pot, it's often capped. So the rake is going to be, if it's uncapped, then with 3% rake, it's going to be 6 pp, so it's break even. But it just shows you that if opponent has aces and he overplays it on the flop, even these hands, especially in position, start to be calling hands. And if we change the hand a little better, let's make it double suited. More components. We can see that the stack off frequency goes up from 25 to 30. So we can stack off slightly more. Still high equity. The EV remains virtually the same. But when we make it more coordinated, 19967, once again, stack off percentage goes up. Now we're stacking off 1 out of 3 times. And these calculations are just for fit fold. We have options to either stack off on the flop or don't. And the EV is the same 6. So what we can say that when we add those components to both pairs, we hit the flops more often, but the average equity starts to go down because flush draws can be dominated. And the EV remains quite the same. So with pocket pairs, I would say that call with good ones. At least one suit, some connectivity. If you have some 9-9, I mean 10-10-6 deuce rainbow, then those you can fold. But if you add at least decent connectivity and at least one suit to your pocket pairs, an opponent is aces heavy and overplays, you can definitely call. Problem is when he doesn't have pocket aces. Then it means that you're still going to stack off the same amount of times, but he's going to bet fold, which lowers your EV. And sometimes he doesn't have aces, he could be having way more equity versus you when he decides to stack off. So if his range is wider and he's selective when he stacks off, then your average equity goes down and the EV goes down. So if opponent is 3-betting with wider ranges, then fold those pocket pairs. Win rate matters too. Win rate when you call 3-bet should be negative. Like if you go to your tracker and make a filter where we open and we call a 3-bet, the graph should go down. And you might get a result if you have a big sample size, like win rate is minus 200 pp per 100. And this is often a spot where people start to think that, oh man, I'm bleeding so much money, I have to stop calling 3-bets. Well, if you always fold to 3-bet after you have opened the hand, it would result in minus 350 per 100. So by calling 3-bets, if you make anything better than minus 350, the calling has been better option than the fold. So I would say minus 200 is still decent results. The problem is often that even with 100,000 hand sample size, then the amount you have called 3-bet should be 1,000 or 2,000 maybe. And in 1,000 or 2,000 hands, then few big pots could really change the win rate. So always pay attention to the sample sizes. It's good to remember that more marginal the hand is, the more you have to think, should I call? Then more likely it is minus EV to make the call. And it's deceiving because when we have those double-suited connected hands, then we're making really good results. And then those crappy hands out there, they might be minus 500 pp per 100. But when they all mix together, the overall would be minus 200. But if we could fold the most marginal ones, it would increase the win rate. And if you have a big sample size, then you can filter your hands in database. Make a filter where you open call 3-bet and then start to filter with pre-flop hand filtering, like pocket pairs, rainbow hands, single suited versus double suited. And if you have a big sample size, you might pick up that, okay, we could actually fold a lot of those crappy hands. So in the end, most of the non-premium hands are close to break even, especially with the rake. So whether you fold 15%, 30% or 45%, in the end the win rate might be the same, because most of those are break even. The EV is same with folding than playing. Do you love variance? The more you call, the more variance you get, the more rate you pay. But you might get a nice image. Do you like gambling? Do you think you are good in estimating equities and making post-flop decisions? Those are the decisions, but then you could get the same results by folding slower amount to 3-bets or folding less to 3-bets. And results might be exactly the same. So it's not the end of the world if you don't fold 50% to 3-bets. As said, in the end, it doesn't matter much if you call or not. Of course, when we go to the extreme end, like the super crappy hands, it matters a lot. But on most of those medium strength hands. But if you are kind of player, as most of us are, that you don't like to fold to 3-bets. Well, you might think that, okay, if I fold a lot, then opponent can exploit me and I'm so weak. And everyone will laugh at me and I won't have any friends. Then if you call a lot to 3-bets, then most likely you can increase your win rate by starting to fold the crappy hands. And just learn to fold. And the thing is that even if you fold more, you can't be exploited. No one will do it. So don't be afraid that if you start to fold a lot, you will be exploited. Do you have notes on any of your opponent that folds a lot to 3-bet? Most likely you don't, because you don't pay attention, unless you have a HUD, of course. But it requires such a long time and to pay attention because you don't know what he folded. You might have a note that doesn't fold to 3-bets when he calls with rainbow kings. But if someone folds a lot, you probably don't have a note. And even if you do, what happens? Very often when you 3-bet, there are still players behind you, so you just can't go bananas and start to 3-bet 30% of hands because he folds a lot. Or you can, but then it's probably going to backfire. And then your range becomes so weak that once he calls, his EV goes up a lot. If opponent starts to 3-bet you really wide, like you fold a few times a 3-bet and then opponent goes bananas and starts to 3-bet every other hand, then definitely we need to start calling more. And we probably would want to tighten opening range pre-flop a little. Players like this strong range would be easier for you to call and create money. Post-flop. 3-bet pots are often low stacked pot ratio situations. Oh, by the way, I made a sim. What happens if opponent goes bananas on 3-betting, and made a heads-up sim where I forced the opponent to 3-bet 35% out of position. So your average everyday maniac. What happens is, especially in position, solver doesn't fold, it folds only 10% or less. So versus those maniacs, especially in position, we're going to call a lot, because then if we hit anything, the EV goes up a lot when opponent's range is so wide. But if you're not comfortable in calling wide versus aggressive maniac, you should tighten up the pre-flop opening range a lot, so you will have easier decisions. And before opening, always think, what do I do if he or when he 3-bets? Is this a bet fold hand? Is this a bet call or bet 4-bet hand? So you know what to do. If you don't know what to do, then don't even open. So 3-bet pots are often low stack to pot ratio situation, which means that if we hit the flop, we should often stack off. Often in 3-bet pots, the post-flop, the hands play themselves. There isn't a lot of room to make moves or blobs. There are some, but very often, especially if opponent makes a big size in c-bet, then the hands play themselves. So the most important aspect in 3-bet game is your pre-flop hand selection. That's the deciding factor, because post-flop, harder to make mistakes. So it's a pre-flop hand selection that dictates who makes money. I mean, we want to be the ones who dominate opponent more often than he dominates us. Even when calling, we want to have hands that, well, we are not probably dominating opponent, but we can flop something with backup equity. So coordinated hands. 2 pairs, we will have at least a cut shot. And so on. It's hard to bleed money away post-flop in 3-bet game if you are a decent player, unless you're bet folding a lot. If you c-bet in 3-betting and then fold a lot to raises, you're going to bleed money. Or when opponent 3-bets you, he checks, you stab, he raises, and you start to fold a lot, then you're probably going to bleed money away. Or you bet for value, but when opponent raises, you fold. Well, it's a different scenario. This applies to the 3-better, that it's hard to bleed money away post-flop. But same applies when you are caller. If you hit the flop and you still fold a lot, then you're bleeding money. But the bottom line, what I'm trying to say here is, post-flop is not that important in 3-bet game. It's not too complicated once you know the basics. But the deciding factor is that pre-flop, so pay attention to that. And the thing is that in 3-bet pots, setups are not always setups. Set versus set, okay, that might be a setup in 3-bet pot land. 2 pairs, bottom 2 versus top 2. Is that a setup? Pair and flush draw versus overpair and flush draw. Is that a setup? Sometimes it is, but often it's not. It's about pre-flop hand selection. The smaller cards you play, the smaller flush draws you play, the higher chance there is that opponent is dominating you and you have way less equity than you estimated. And 3-bet game is all about domination. And that's why we should be folding quite a lot to 3-bets in the end to avoid those setups with our hands. Sometimes we have a great equity, but sometimes the opponent is dominating us and it sucks. But yeah, setups are not always setups in 3-bet game. It's about domination and hand selection. So smaller your hand is, you might consider folding or not stacking off if you hit the draw or something. It slightly depends. So the initial question was, should we fold to 3-bets? The answer is yes. Higher the rate, the more we fold. Better the opponent is, more we fold. The more ways we have to exploit him, or he has tendencies that we can exploit, the more we can call, but even then it's not money-making machine. Always remember that if we open and someone 3-bets, our calling range is to just minimize the damage. We're still going to lose money in the long run, but we're going to lose slightly less than by folding. So it's not like we're making a lot of money, it's just damage control. And as you're going to take some damage, folding is okay. So if you have any doubt, should I call the 3-bet, or oh man, he 3-bets, my hand is crappy, would I get lucky? Those are the thoughts that should say to you that I'll fold the crappy hand, move on. Often what prevents us from folding 3-bets as much as we should is the idea that we look weak. No one wants to look weak on the tables. Or we think that, okay, if I start to fold too much, the opponent is going to exploit me and run me over. Not going to happen. He's not. So don't be afraid to fold. Also, one thing that might prevent us is that we're thinking we might get lucky. And we're mentally attached. This is something I've been talking in previous videos about mental attachment. When we open the hand, we think that, okay, we have a good hand, it's plus EV, we open, money-making situation. And dreams are shattered, opening 3-bets, boom. But the hand was good and we decided to open, we are already getting attached with the hand, we open it for a small period of time, we thought we're doing plus EV things here. It's hard to fold that hand. We're already on a ride with it. But most likely every one of us should fold a bit too much, a bit more to 3-bets. Alright. Thanks for watching the video. I hope it gave you some ideas about folding to 3-bets. We didn't go to actual hands, what we fold to 3-bets. It's just start from the bottom. Fold the crappy hands, especially fold those crappy ace-high hands that are not connected. Because very often, good 3-betting range has a ton of ace-XXS hands. And good 3-betting range dominates your ace-9, 7-4 by a mile. So crappy ace-high hands, crappy pocket pairs, rainbow hands, those are good to start. And then you're already folding 10 to 20% of hands. Alright, I will see you in the next video. Keep up the good work. I will see you on PLO Order Discord. Bye bye.